Hi everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for joining. We'll give everyone a minute or two to join. Let's give everyone a second to log in. While we're waiting, if you want to drop in the chat where you're joining us from, we can get an idea of where everyone's coming from. Wonderful, we've got Minneapolis, Colorado, New York. Welcome everyone. We'll get started in just a minute or two. Holland, Michigan. Also, just wanted to call everyone's attention. David posted in the chat the link to the Destinations workbook. So if you want to pull that open, that was released today, as well as the online flipping book dropped in the chat. Got some folks from DC. Welcome everyone. We'll get started in just a minute or two. All right, hello everyone and welcome to today's session, Apex COVID-19 Business Recovery Task Force, Destination Guidance. My name is Sarah and I'll be helping to facilitate this session. Hope you all enjoyed that opening session with Janet Stovall and are excited for the last day of EIC Advance. In this next session, we have a great panel of folks to lead the discussion. This is a live session, so please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box within Pathable and we'll have a great opportunity to answer those live. And as always, if you have any technical issues joining this session, feel free to just drop that in the chat and I'll be sure to assist you. With that, I'll turn things over to Matthias to begin.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. Good evening from Germany, live from Germany. It's great to be part of this panel today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's great that you join us today for the release of the new guidance for destinations from Apex COVID-19 from the Recovery Task Force. Some of the task force members are joining us today. My name is Matthias Schultze. I'm the Managing Director of the German Convention Bureau. A few days ago, David Kliman approached me and asked me to run today's session. And he said to me, well, you must be very brave to moderate this group today. And I answered and I said to him, David, you guys must be very brave taking the risk, asking a German to moderate today's session. Well, anyway, thank you for having me. It's great to be part of this wonderful group. I'm not alone today. With me, we have Rhanee, Palma, Brad Weaber, Jerry Cito, Cleo Battle, and David Kliman. They will get introduced in a few minutes. I have prepared a very great German welcome speech for you today, and give me a few minutes to introduce the topic which affects all of us. COVID-19 is a global pandemic, and we are all fighting against it with great initiatives like the one EIC has launched and which will be published today during this webinar. The COVID-19 pandemic has undoubtedly caused a dramatic break for the global economy. Travel and contact restrictions, which were introduced with the aim of containing the virus, are preventing or hindering personnel encounters. Therefore, these restrictions are also affecting the very heart and very core of events. The Delegate Journey, and that's what it is about today, the Delegate Journey has also been heavily influenced by the COVID-19 related distancing and hygiene measures, which must be considered in all planning and communication activities until further notice. For the time being, the consistent implementation of, we call it low-touch events, has turned into a basic requirement for organizing face-to-face or in-person events. Event planners, destinations, and locations share the responsibility of revising event concepts and ensuring that an event is in fact compliant with the coronavirus-related regulations. It will be essential for all of us, for planners, locations, and destinations, to find solutions which will enable the important exchange between participants while also ensuring that all participants will be keeping their safe distance. And I'm very grateful that EIC took the initiative and started to create a great guidance for all of us who are involved in the business events industry. And today's webinar, that's what you have seen on the website, is focusing on 3 main topics. And the panelists will provide you with in-depth insights on, firstly, tools developed by destinations designed to assist event professionals safely plan meetings and events. Secondly, key questions DMOs and event organizers should ask to create effective and trusted partnerships. And last but not least, resources to help planners and suppliers safely manage events. That's what it all about is at the moment. And therefore, the task force has created a great flip book. And I went through all the pages, through every single sentence, and it's a great masterpiece. And the flip book covers hot topics like, phases of recovery for DMOs, which is more than important at the moment. Mapping the event journey in a destination. It helps to get better insights of crisis communication resources, especially in times of a pandemic. The role of travel bubbles, and that's my personal favorite, the transforming roles of CVBs, DMOs, and convention centers during COVID-19. And last but not least, best practices, and I prefer today the expression of new practices, because everything we're doing at the moment is new, and it's very often the best, but it's still very new. Well, and last but not least, before I hand over to the great panel and we start the discussion, when I went through every of the single pages of the flip book, I really liked the foreword by the CEO of EIC, Amy Calvert, who wrote, and I quote, "We have an opportunity to use this time to reflect on our own intentions, live our values, and commit on the journey to come out of this crisis more connected and with an impact that this is better understood globally." And she's adding, and that's what I really like, the sentence is brilliant. "The pandemic has shown us the most powerful way that we have indeed more in common than not. And it is with love and commitment to this common humanity that this work is being put forth." So collaboration is key, especially in these times. And that's what you guys are showing, collaborating. Even you are competitors and somehow you are collaborating to create solutions for the entire industry. That's brilliant. And the task force, which you are all part of, they followed the motto during the entire process that restarting the global economy engine in a COVID-19 world has presented unique sets of challenges. The hospitality community has united to create live event protocols so that in-person gatherings can take place once again. So guys, you all were part of this task force. You still are part of this task force. And please introduce yourself. Let's start with ladies first, Rhanee, Palma.
Good morning. My name is Ronnie Palma. I'm the Chief Sales Officer for Visit Oakland and excited to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you with us. And Cleo Battle, please introduce yourself.
Morning, I'm Cleo Battle. I'm Chief Operating Officer here at Louisville Tourism. I'm excited to be here with all of you this morning. This morning from Louisville. It's happy hour time for Matthias.
Indeed, thanks God it's Friday. I'm just waiting for my first beer this afternoon. And Jerry Cito.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Jerry Cito here. I'm the Executive Vice President of Convention Development for NYC and Company, New York City's DMO. So wonderful to be here and thank you all.
Thank you, Jerry. David Kliman.
Good morning from Tucson, Arizona. David Kliman. I'm the chair of the Destinations Group and co-founder of the Business Recovery Task Force. Glad to be here.
Well, it's David Kliman. I have to work on my pronunciation.
Deutsch Kliman, yeah.
Well,
In
I'm
German,
learning.
Kliman, in English, Kliman. It's no problem. I answer to both.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, David. And last but not least, Brad Weaver.
Hi, everyone. Good morning from Washington, D.C. I'm Brad Weber, a principal of Brad Weber Consulting Group and a member of this task force. And it is a privilege to have done the work with this amazing team. And thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, guys. And let's start with our discussion. Firstly, I'd like to ask David, because you started from the very beginning with this task force. And can you explain us a little bit about the process and how many DMOs were involved in the survey, and what type of data did you collect, and how did you start the entire process, David?
Yeah, the whole process started really on the second week of the pandemic in the United States, mid-March. We started the task force up, and the genesis was there was no handbook. There was no consolidated information, and our goal for the entire industry, not just the DMO side, was to create those new practices. And so that's what we have attempted to do. Between Cleo, Jerry, Brad, and I reached out to over 75 DMOs in the United States, the European Union, South America, Europe, Africa, Middle East, and we got an overwhelming response from people ranging from just an enormous amount of data to, we need your help. Can you help us aggregate, curate this data? So you have in the flip book a list of links, and most of these things are links. And we will continue to update it, but we reached out to over 75 DMOs.
75 DMOs, that's amazing. And David, when did you personally realize that coronavirus pandemic is it's a very complex thing, and that you have to work on a solution for that? When did you personally?
Yeah, I mean, my experience was for many, like in North America, on March 17th in the state of California, we went into lockdown. And like most of us, I had a calendar that was chock-a-block, completely full from March 17th onward to basically the middle of December. And within 48 hours, my calendar was empty. Every event, every contract, every speaking engagement, advisory board that Brad and I are in the industry of convening and moderating advisory boards, they evaporated. And I was on the phone with Kristen Horstman, co-chair of the task force. She is with Salesforce. And we were trying to figure out how we could go from shock and awe to taking action. And we said, we're not gonna let this pandemic put us on the floor crying that our calendars are empty. We're gonna take this and run with it and try and find solutions. And that's what this is. We didn't think it would last this long. We thought by summer, the North American summer, we'd be back in business, but here we are now, end of November, and we're in the depths of it.
Absolutely. So thank you for sharing your insights with us, David. And I think none of us will forget the day when we realized that Corona is such a complex thing and that it affects all of our lives, be it the private, the personal lives, as well as our business lives. Well, and in situations like we have now, it's important to ask questions. And what do you believe are the key questions for DMOs to ask event professionals? Cleo, Jerry, and Rhanee, you discussed a lot about this topic. What's your insights? What's your opinion on what's your perspective on that topic? Which questions should DMOs ask event professionals?
I'll jump in.
Right in on this. Gotta love it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jerry.
I think, first and foremost, thank you for being a part of this with us, Matthias and David and everyone for joining, and EIC. It's been an incredible experience. And, what I think has been really good is the collaboration across all parts of business, which has been really, really good. Clients, of course, but suppliers as well, which is what this group is all about. But it's really refreshing to see that it all come together in this way. But to get to your question, I think some of the most important questions are, what's the strategic purpose of the event, really? And has it changed, and how does it change because of the current environment that we're in? You know, do you expect meetings to return to pre-pandemic levels and formulas? Those are other questions that us DMOs need to be asking our event professionals and what they're trying to accomplish. And during this hybrid piece, really, what's their definition of success of a hybrid meeting? I mean, that's really something that's most important as we go into the short-term part, which would lead to the long-term recovery.
Yeah, and I would agree with Jerry. I think it has been an interesting process, and to see many of our peers come together to collaborate. Competitive windows have come down. We've got regular communication amongst each other, and we're rooting for each other, because we need to be able to show successes regardless of what cities they happen in. And so that's been great. You know, and to your question, Matthias, you know, and I just getting into the weeds of the flip book, and I know the link for the flip book has been provided to the attendees, but if you go into the health and safety section, you know, one of the questions that I know has resonated for a lot of the folks we talk to in my city, will the event organizer provide health screenings? This is getting into the weeds, but when you think about it, health screenings and temperature checks, and how will you execute that? And that has become a real partnership between the planner as well as the destination. And it's a balance. You've got the event specific, which is the planner, and how is the health going to be executed from an event perspective. Then you have venue specific. What will the venue do? How will the venue provide the health protocols and things you need? And then the city perspective, where's the city at? So the three of those become a real balance. And as we were going through this process with a lot of our peer DMOs, that really bubbled up a lot of, you know, this balance between the event, the venue, and the city as you go through this sort of health process.
I actually agree with everyone as well. I have those same issues. And the thing that's really important for us in Oakland is, in addition to those things, is the communication. Each state, each city is so different. In California, we are not allowed to have meetings yet. So we're learning from everybody. The collaborative spirit is great. But definitely on the communication part, for our state, actually, we are very concerned with our local communities and that sentiment there. So we want to make sure that people are responsible when they come here. Since the pandemic has started, I've been to a couple of conferences live, and it's one thing when you're at the event and venue. It's another thing when people are out and about and how they behave. So, you know, that part is really important for us.
That's a very valid point.
On top of that for a second, you know, I couldn't agree more as far as the consistent messaging that a DMO is responsible in putting out to not only our travelers and our event professionals, but also the community. So I think you're dead on, Ronnie, as far as just the role of what the DMOs have and the responsibility to not only communicate, but communicate effectively and accurately with the governments in all of our destinations as well, which is really important.
I think you made a very valid point, Jerry and Rhanee. Communication is key, and I think it's also important to be as transparent as possible. Do you have great examples, concrete examples on communications in certain situations which can help the audience to better understand what a new practice maybe could look like?
I think I can jump in on that. And we found examples from DMOs around the planet where they had established a single point of contact at the DMO to liaise with government officials, health officers, So there was a seamless communications portal for the event professional, because we identified early in the crisis that there were so many places to get information and misinformation. And we wanted to encourage DMOs and find DMOs that were truly embracing the role of being the facilitator and central portal of truthful information. And so DMOs that embrace that, and there are many, where they have a liaison with a health officer, government officer, that I think is the best example.
Yeah, I'll just, I think Ronnie mentioned this. It's the communication, not only for the client from a DMO perspective, but internally within our communities have changed dramatically. As you said, David, with health and government officials, whether they're state or they're local. But, I know ourselves, and I know a lot of other bureaus really became the communication piece for a lot of entities in the community. All of your chief stakeholders, your buildings, your museums and attractions, your hotels, but also restaurants and other facilities were looking to our information as to what was happening in the community. And we elevated our communication, and we became very transparent in the information that we put out. So, that role has certainly been elevated during this crisis.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Cleo you just stated related to the role of DMO, the advocacy work of the industry. Look, we could have the cleanest and the safest buildings, but if we can't get people there safely, and the work that's been done about creating all that energy around the airline and changing some of those protocols in airports, you don't have that, you really don't have anything, and that's been amazing. So feedback I get constantly from planners when they're talking on boards relates to, look, it's fine at the building and we got here safely, but what's happening with the local economy, local tourism, local citizens on their behavior. And now more and more, we're seeing the role of a DMO even more critical, and messaging out throughout the community that, in order to bring people back, we have to show as a destination that we are safely bringing everyone back.
That's a great point, Brad. If I could just jump in as well. I think another success of this group, the overall EIC group, has been really the code of conduct conversations, really, and the solutions that we're all talking about. It's not just owned by one group. This wasn't a supplier's issue to figure out or left up to the event professionals to handle. It includes attendees and delegates and locals, for everyone to really be all in and to follow the guidelines that are provided for us to all re-engage with each other safely. And safety is that common kind of word that really brings us all together in all these conversations.
Well, that's a good topic, and that leads us, I think, to the next question. And because the entire process, which you have described, is I would call it a multi-stakeholder process, because we have so many different stakeholders involved, and be it the supply side, be it the demand side, and be it the destination, bringing all these different parts of the markets together. And therefore, I was really interested in what do you think are the key questions for event professionals to ask DMOs? Brad, you started already with asking a few of these questions. What would you think are the most important questions event professionals should ask DMOs in order to get prepared for a safe process in order to plan an in-person or face-to-face event?
Thank you. And it's really interesting to watch the journey that we've all been on for several months and how these questions are evolving and changing. Questions that might have been asked earlier in the spring are completely changing now, and tomorrow there'll be new questions again. Over the last 6 months, I've had the privilege of being able to facilitate and work with so many organizations, and I've heard over probably 200 to 300 feedbacks from various planners in all market segments. And the thing that's happening now more is the question is that planners are really grappling with is, when are they coming back, and what's going to be there for them when they come back? So many organizations now are really looking at destinations on what the product will be, what is the inventory going to be for the future. You know, it's interesting. We're seeing more and more clients are going ahead and moving all their meetings to virtual, and some hybrid will probably come back second, third quarter 21. Some organizations, particularly those that follow science, are now saying 22. Yeah, there's a lot of work ahead of us in this regard. So the questions keep evolving. And now I'm hearing more and more is how do they have access, first of all, locally to local health officials? That's very critical for many health organizations. In addition is this new world of virtual and hybrid. This is not going away. Hybrid will be here forever. And there's grace in this. And I'm very much a silver lining kind of person. And looking at the grace is that organizations are now touching more attendees than they've ever been able to in the past. And that's going to further educate and completely grow our industry. Cleo mentioned about how everyone's communicating. There's a lot more information now. Planners are asking about what is the state, various cities in the state, how are they working together? How are they working together to advocate? So those are critical questions as well. On the virtual side, this is a big one. The technology side is, where are we from the standpoint of how buildings are going to be able to have the capabilities? You know, is it a static studio? Is it roving studios? It's all of the above. And so there's more of a consultative opportunity now, I think, ever before from the DMO side. So those are really some of the top ones that I see. COVID fatigue, I think, is happening. So I think people are now looking forward more to the cloudy crystal ball that we all have.
Yeah, Matthias, you're on mute. And just to follow up on Brad, I agree with everything that you've said, and that other questions and examples that event professionals are looking for could include specific examples of the ways a DMO or a venue or a supplier is actualizing an omni-channel event. I concur exactly with Brad that there is grace in this crisis, and that we now as live event professionals can expand our audience through omni-channel or hybrid events, and ways in which, if Matthias is welcoming people in a German city, that they can have technology and tools and actual physical setups in a venue, or if Ronnie's having people in Oakland or anywhere in the world, that event professionals want examples. And this is all new. That, you know, we thought we knew what we were doing before the pandemic, and now there's a whole new landscape. And the DMO should be the provider of these new practices.
You know, I would just add to that. You're exactly right, David. It is all new. You know, from my sales perspective, what we're hearing from clients, you know, the new commodity is space, AV, and technology. And so from a destination, from a facility, what are you doing to meet this new need for space, this new need for AV and technology? What relationships do you have in your community regarding AV and technology? How will you accommodate my new meeting design from a space perspective? Those are the questions we're hearing, and we're hearing those questions into 22. You know, so this is not, so that when you think about those two things and how we need to begin to think about that from a planner's perspective, we're all going to be challenged to meet these new needs.
Well, thank you, Cleo. I understood from you that, and what you said, Brad, is that in the future, we need to have a three-dimensional delegate journey. We have the classical, traditional analog delegate journey, which moves from a high touch economy to a low touch economy with a lot of touchless touch points in terms of, we use digital components, for example, facial recognition for entering a convention center. And then we will have the virtual delegate journey, which is, you know, for those who only participate purely virtually. And then we will have the hybrid delegate journey, where those meet, who some of them are in person, attending an in-person meeting, and the rest is just a virtual viewer, as we call it. And that is so complex, this three-dimensional customer journey. And I understood that destinations and locations need to get prepared for that three-dimensional customer journey or delegate journey in order to serve the needs and the requirements of the customer of tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's really interesting. I think that we need to change our words and our vernacular. I don't think we're going to have planners anymore. We're going to have producers. And planning is an outcome now of what a producer does. And I would implore destinations to start working with your local television broadcast stations and things of that nature, to start working on a consultative side with the new producers that are out there. Yeah, it's very daunting. Many I'm saying planners, many producers are really waiting and watching and trying to find out what their peers are doing. Every time I do some webinar event, everyone starts talking, in the chat box about how to go for you. What did you use? What's the tips? What's the tricks? Imagine, when you go in now on site visits, that you're not only looking for space, rooms, things of that nature, you're looking at production quality, production consulting. And I think that's an opportunity for this evolution for DMOs to be the absolute consultative partner on this issue.
Well, I like that.
Brad, I think you're dead on with that. And I think that it's not only in our convention centers and our buildings, like you mentioned, but it's really the silver lining, like you mentioned, is the unique venues that destinations have within their ecosystems that they can take advantage of that will offer these types of broadcast and hybrid options for planners to take advantage in. It's not only just our hotels, it's not only just the convention centers, but unique spaces that we all have. I mean, just Broadway theaters alone in New York that are pivoting to offering these types of things. So I think all the DMOs are embracing that point, and well said.
That's a great point. And I think when you say that we move from planning to production, that means somehow that we have to learn from other sectors, maybe like the TV and entertainment sector, for example. Maybe we can learn from Hollywood how to produce the meeting of tomorrow or the business event of tomorrow. So that means that the future of serving our customers will be more cross-sectoral. Is that what you're saying? Is it mixing up with other sectors, with other skills and with other requirements and needs?
I think that's exactly it. I think the most successful DMOs of the next future will be those that connect the local intellectual content of their destination to an event producer, to create the DNA of Louisville or Berlin or Kuala Lumpur in a way that only a DMO can do as that perfect local knowledge base, and then get away. We've all talked about getting away from dates, rates, and space. That's table stakes. But to create that unique connection to the local DNA or intellectual content, that's a gold mine.
Okay, that means, David, I like that approach. That means that I think in a more and more digitized world, authenticity is even more important than it was before. And if you broadcast from a destination, it needs to be very authentic. So if you have a certain topic dealing within your conference, it needs to fit with the competencies and the expertise of the destination. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Very interesting. I have another question for you regarding the delegate journey or the customer journey, the traditional customer journey, which that's what I understood also from the flip book, needs to turn from a high touch to a low touch economy, meaning we need some digital tools to be implemented to create seamless and touchless customer journeys. Any examples, any ideas of how that might look like in the future, or any concrete ideas which you have experienced so far?
Well, I think we've seen some examples of venues and destinations using technology, such as in the United States at many airports, we have a product called Clear, which it's a known traveler processing product online. and venues are using clear technology to process delegates from a health screening point of view. I think that's just one example, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues for others.
Yeah, you know, some of the destinations I'm familiar with, and I know it's something we're doing here in Louisville, is virtual site inspections. You know, we're doing video of all of our facilities, our hotels, our museums, attractions, our centers, so that we can do virtual site inspections with clients all over the country. So when, Matthias, you talk about low touch, you don't want to get on a plane and come to Louisville to take a look at our package of facilities, we're going to have it and walk you through a site inspection virtually. So we are seeing some destinations produce this type of work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Cleo. I think all the destinations are offering that now. The smart ones are, of course. As far as still going on with the sales process, so to speak, but in a different way, and providing the opportunity to still experience a destination in a city or an environment or a convention center or a venue virtually in this way, virtual field trips, virtual site tours that you talked about. So we're definitely taking advantage of that opportunity now to still make sure that our customers can taste what our destinations are all about.
Good. So that means, especially in these times, we need to stay in touch with our customers, even we are not able to meet them face to face. We have to create alternative solutions in order to showcase our products and services and share information with the customers which they are looking for.
Yeah. If I could add one quick thing, it's interesting. I'm starting to travel a bit now, and what's been fascinating is that this has become my world more than I ever thought it would be. And I think we're going to find a lot of efficiencies, a lot of ways to reduce a lot of costs, and quite frankly, ways to reduce a lot of waste. Because if you have gone out to eat on an outdoor patio, you're now scanning the menu on your QR codes. That's now starting to happen as you go into various facilities. I recently checked into a hotel and really had no interaction of touching anything from anyone. The way I entered my room, if I could just figure out a way to have my luggage magically fly into my room, that'd be great. But other than that, I think we're going to find that this is going to start becoming much more efficient. And I think it's going to have an outcome that's very positive, and that's reducing a lot of waste that we have as well.
Oh, good point. Well, let's move on to the next question, and let's go back to the flip book. I try to be in time. As you ask a German to be the moderator, I have to finish the webinar in time, of course. Another question was for all of you, what are the most surprising findings and outcomes or experiences you've had or learned about this flip book and the journey you took since March this year?
I'll start, and I'll say I think the biggest surprise is how deep and how long the crisis has been going on. As I said earlier, I think in March we thought we'd be back in the summer, July, August, September, and here we are November, and we don't know when it's going to end. That, I think, is the biggest surprise for me.
David, what are your predictions in the US of how long that crisis might take, especially for the business events?
This is a guess based on analysis, but it looks like we are going to have approval on at least one or more vaccines, potentially this week. If that happens, I believe that by spring, April, May of next year, you'll have widespread vaccine use in North America. United States is strange because you have a percentage of people that are afraid to take a vaccine. So we need 60 or 70% usage. I think that we'll get that if the vaccine moves forward April, May 2021, inshallah, God willing.
Good. Thank you, David, for sharing your predictions with us. Who else had, Rhanee?
Yeah, I wanted to, as I was reading this flip book, one thing that I realized was I have crazy information overload. You know, like a lot of our hotels aren't as staffed anymore, so I have to know everything for them, provide them all the latest research and all these things. Now I have another stakeholder, that's the Alameda County Health Officer. It was real. This flip book has been incredibly helpful in creating like communication for all the different stakeholders. And at one point, when I was tasked to write the application for a variance to have meetings again in Alameda County, I have to work with 2 other cities, and they're all so incredibly different that it was just a breath of fresh air to be able to call David and say, oh my gosh, what do I do here? And the other thing that I also recognized is that even though this is incredibly helpful, all of our destinations are completely different. For example, California has an equity measure. So what that means is California launched the first national mandate requiring that local officials control the coronavirus in the most impoverished communities. Typically, people of color have been disproportionately exposed to the disease or are just struggled to avoid contacting the disease. So a lot of these challenges, I mean, it's really great because I'm able to think of questions that I wouldn't have thought of. I mean, you know what I mean? So like, it's been very, very helpful for us to just understand all the different processes, because I feel like I'm supposed to be the expert for everybody right now.
Well, Ronnie, that's a great point. I think I'd jump in. I think we've all had to be a lot of different things to a lot of different people, depending on the subject and the questions we're asking and feeling. I mean, again, the silver lining is that a lot of event organizers, travelers, however, have really seen the value in what the DMOs can put out there and how we can assist them in order to get the right information and to move the needle and get them what they are looking for. Just because a lot of our members and the DMOs themselves were dealing with so much little resources in order to get all that done. So we are filling the gap in that way, in a big way.
Yeah, and this crisis really, I'm seeing the opportunity where our local community is appreciating what tourism can bring. Also, like our hotels think we're more experts now. It's just been, I'm really seeing this as an opportunity.
Yeah, very good to hear that. And I fully understood that the flip book is helpful because it offers a kind of structure. It offers you to implement processes. And believe me, as a German, I love process and I love structures and everything, because that helps you to better understand a situation and to better handle it. So we need structures, we need process in order to have an answer to all the challenges we are facing at the moment. And therefore, I think the flip book is very helpful. And I can see in the chat that someone is asking whether the flip book will be updated regularly. And I think that was mentioned in the beginning by David, that you plan to regularly update.
Well, I mean, our plan is to keep it updated. We're not going to be updating it weekly or monthly, but
on a daily basis.
2021, as things really change, we will keep it updated. And the beauty of it is it's digital. So it's quite easy as we get new information to pop that in. But realistically, this is not a weekly or a monthly update. We'll probably look at quarterly or every few months, keeping it updated.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, David. Any other key findings, would you like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I would love to. It's been a really amazing experience. Boy, I mean, I remember Actually, I contracted COVID. My first meeting, when I was finally sitting up in my bed, I was able to sit in a chair and join this group. And one PSA, everyone, this is a very, very serious virus. So be so careful. For me, it was staring at the screen and seeing dozens and dozens and dozens of peers that I've known forever, but from all parts of our industry coming together. There was never once a time where anyone withheld information or like, oh, I got the, it was the most collaborative, really amazing, beautiful thing to see. Not that that's a surprise. I would have totally expect that, but that's evolved. And now I keep learning of more and more cities that are coming together and sharing information. CVBs and DMOs I've always considered to be one of the best partners in my 36 years of events. And it only has rung more true for me as hotel companies have gone through so much and changes and the gaps then that have stepped in from DMOs on helping navigate cities and how to get that booking process going again. So I think if anything, there was no competition, it was all co-opetition.
Yeah, great point. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, and Matthias, I will say, Brad, and I made some of those comments early, what Brad just said. I just think that has been, in my years in this industry, to see the professionals, to see industries come together, no competition, no, just collaboration, and everyone want to provide data to help. And again, we're all rooting for each other. You know, I think in this process, the biggest surprise for me going through this, and I've been honored to be a part of this group. If you asked me in April, it felt like we wouldn't hold a meeting until, you know, this was fully over. And through this process and through the data we collected, it's been great to see facilities figure out how to improve their safety and to change the way they're doing business. And catering companies change the way they provide food and beverage. So you've seen this evolution within our industry of how we do business. And, you know, I attended the Meeting Planners International event a couple of weeks ago in Dallas, and it was great to see them plan a meeting, execute it, see the venue execute it with all the safety protocols. And, you know, there was a moment when I was walking in the pre-function area where I said, wow, this looks like a meeting again. And I was proud to be a part of Apex and to think about sort of where we've come and how far we've come and to see things be able to be executed from the data we've collected. So that's, I think the biggest surprise for me has just been the evolution from March, April to where we are today.
If I can just, add, and it's worth repeating, and I agree with Cleo and David, your comments, and Ronnie, yours as well. The collaboration between the destinations has really been refreshing. We've all said it was there before, but I will tell you, this really put it in the forefront. I've never fought harder and rooted more for a San Francisco, a Las Vegas, a Chicago, a Miami, a Philadelphia, and I know all of my colleagues about New York as well, because all of us being successful means the industry is successful. So that's really,
and I think an unintended consequence of that grace that has come out of the crisis is the fact that event producers many of them are going to have hub and spoke events that will have multiple cities involved. And this co-opetition, this cooperation between cities and venues is going to truly benefit that new reality.
Good, thank you, David. And I think that the cooperation or the competition you mentioned will be key in the future as well. It will be key on a global level. So why not cooperating? We did a test lab a few weeks ago, which we called BOCOM, Borderless Communication in the Digital Age. And we tried to interconnect different destinations all around the world with different hubs. So only a few, 20, 30 or 100 people met in one of the hubs, and we interconnected all the 4 or 5 hubs together, and then we try to interact and communicate through the different technologies and channels. So that was quite interesting, and we learned a lot. And that's what you all said: learning, learning, learning. That's what we all are doing at the moment, and that's good, because for many years we stopped more or less learning because we knew how it worked, and we did same every day, every year, and every event was the same. This year, next year, and the year after. But now we are learning new ideas, new solutions, new products, and new practices. And that's the good thing with Corona, with the coronavirus. There are a lot of bad things, of course, but there are also some good things. And one of the good things is the flip book, which you have created and published, which will be, as we learned from David, updated on a regular basis. I have one last question before we call it a day, or I call it a day for today. It's about other key resources that will be offered in the toolkit. Any other key resources you like to share with the audience, which could be interesting for them?
I think one of a really important resource is we have a crisis communications checklist that both venues and event producers or event planners can use. And this developed not just out of the destinations guide, but in cooperation with other work streams that we've had. And I know any venue and any event producer worth their weight has a crisis plan, but COVID took it to another level. And so we have attempted to consolidate and share that. So that's just one more thing that I'd be sure that people look at.
Okay, thank you, David. Any other resources, any other toolkits from the rest of the group?
For me, I actually appreciate the questions for sentiment studies or customer advisory boards. We've historically used third parties as experts, and I was just told that I'm going to be the expert in running and facilitating my customer advisory boards, among other things to do. So that was actually, they just told me this last week, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to wrap my head around this. And then when I was flipping through the book, I'm like, awesome, I got this.
Great.
Wow. Ronnie, I think you may be getting a call from Brad and David after this call. You never know.
Well, guys, we have only a few minutes left. One last question for each of you. Just answer with 3 words, 3 hashtags. What do you think about the future? Just name 3 hashtags like hope, digitization, and I don't know, collaboration. So what's your 3 hashtags for the future, Rhanee?
Okay, hold on. Can you give me a second? I'll go last.
Okay. So then.
Also, I would say hope, transparency, and communication.
Great. Cleo?
I'd say evolution, communication, and technology.
Great one. And Brad?
Innovation, inspiration, and hope.
Very good.
Mine would be community, transparency, and resilience.
Resilience, a very good one. David?
And I would say collaboration, inspiration, and hope.
And Jerry?
I think I kicked it off. I think it was hope.
Oh, sorry.
Right, and communication.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you very much. EIC could be more than proud, the entire community, that you as volunteers are serving and helping to support the entire industry. Thank you very much from my side. I really appreciated it. And I'm looking very much forward to seeing each of you in person with a drink in my hand and saying hello whenever, wherever it is possible. Thank you very much for your time, and stay tuned and stay healthy.
Thank you, Matthias. We'll turn it over to Sarah from EIC.
Thank you so much. Thanks all. And thank you, Matthias, for moderating that. And of course, for ending on that really nice note with the kind of the hashtags of hope and collaboration. I just wanted to remind everyone that this recording will be available soon after, and we do have a 30-minute break before we jump into our last round of our campfire chat. So thank you again to all of our panelists and to all of you for joining this session. That concludes this session, and thank you again, everyone.
Thank you all. Be well, stay safe.
Thank you.
Happy weekend.
Bye.